Hey everyone, I hope everyone's having a great day, great week so far. Today I'm going to bring on Will Hazlitt to join us in a wonderful conversation, and please enjoy. Hi Will.
Hi Tiffany, thank you for having me on again.
Hey, you're welcome. Yeah, Will was on the show, how long ago would you say?
It's been a few months, maybe 4 months.
And a lot's changed. And for the listeners who remember Will, he writes what he calls rambles, Will's Rambles. And I believe last time you were on the show, we read a couple of them, and they were relevant to things that were going on at that point in your life. And it's my understanding that you have written a couple more rambles along with screenwriting, plays, children's book, graphic novels. And let's just go ahead and jump right into it. Which ramble would you like to share with us first?
Okay, so I just kind of stay present in what's going on in the world and kind of what's important to me in my life.
Okay.
The first one I wrote, it was actually about having the opportunity to listen to all the children. And I call them children because, they're 17 and younger, right, that had spoke at the March for Our Lives event. And after having watched these brave young children do their thing and, speak and be so passionate and courageous, I wrote a ramble about that and shared it on my different social media platforms.
Okay, so for those listeners that don't know what this March for Our Lives was, let's explain it. It was an event that took place in Washington, D.C., right?
Yeah, it took place all over the country, but the head, the main event took place, in Washington, D.C.
Mm-hmm. So who attended this? What was it about?
Primarily, initially started with the survivors of the mass shooting in the Florida high school. Mm-hmm. They began to have a voice, and they're given more of a voice by others that were involved, trying to spread their message. And several different people donated $500,000. Donated. Wow. It ended up being millions of dollars to make sure they could have this event to let their voices be heard as children, but also as children that had been affected by this mass shooting. So they were this particular group, the kids from Florida, were actually flown to Washington, D.C. The New England Patriots owner used a team jet to fly them there, and other children came from all over the world. And the children that were from Florida didn't make it about just their story. They invited children from several other mass shootings that have occurred in the U.S. over the last 10 years to come and speak as well.
I know. It's like it became a thing, like a fad. And I've gone on my own little rampages about that. And, it is an issue about gun control, but it's also like, what is causing these children to just get a gun, walk into a school, and start shooting people? And you can't combine all of the school shootings and say that they all played out the same way, because Columbine was a suicide mission, right? Homicide, suicide. Florida, I don't even know what the person's motive was. Were they being bullied? I'm not sure. But whatever is going on in our schools, we're not doing enough about it to help children deal with things in a way where they don't just hold in all their anger and then bring a gun to school one day and start shooting at them.
I agree. We kind of talked about this before I came on air. Most of what I write that's in my rambles, is primarily always about others and how you can help them and what you can do for them. And since becoming a father, what world I leave my children is the most important thing to me. Everything revolves around that. And again, having other children having to go through this and then watching them speak and be courageous was really powerful.
Okay, so for those of you that want to look it up, I don't know if I can actually play any clips of it, but there are a lot of videos on YouTube. Just look for March for Our Lives. And there were a lot of public speakers there, a lot of famous people. Miley Cyrus sang The Climb. I saw Amy Schumer was there. Now, tell me which one of the speeches was most powerful to you and why?
That's a tough question. There's no one speech for me. I mean, again, because it was children from multiple shootings. And one of the strong points was when Emma had, one of the girls from Florida had just literally stood up there for the entire time the shooting took, the 7 minutes, from when, they were normal kids till kids who had survived a mass shooting. So that one is pretty powerful. Martin Luther King's granddaughter spoke, and she's just a little squirt, I think like 9 or 10 years old.
Wow.
And so, again, every speech was powerful in its own way. And the fact that the kids from Florida used the platform for not just them, but for all the children that had been affected's voices was really strong.
So they created
there's no favorite. I watched a lot of them multiple times.
Okay. The one, you said her name was Emma. I did see the video. I haven't watched it, but after you telling me, this video goes on for 7 minutes and 2 seconds, and she doesn't say anything the whole time. That's how long the shooting, and what you just said. She went from a normal childhood into the traumatized person that she is now. She's going to battle depression for the rest of her life. PTSD is going to come into play. A lot of things could come of this. This really messes these kids up. And that's not something that you get over. It's just like PTSD from going to, World War II or whatever. Would you agree?
Yeah, and I think, having worked in the mental health care field for a long time, I think the fact that they are having a voice and they are being courageous and charging forward is going to help them a lot. But there's still always, there's always going to be those unseen wounds that people carry with them. And these are young children that have had to carry those wounds with them. So it's the wound, I think, is always deeper when you have it at such a young age. But the fact that they are being courageous and speaking, I think, is going to help them so much better later in life.
I think you're right. And you made a really good point. When traumatic events happen around 14, 15, 16, you're not able to cope with it correctly. There aren't that many resources available. And I can tell you from personal experience, I talk about this all the time, about being broken, but it's not an outside broken. You can't see it. People just walk around and go through life and go to therapy and try to get all the help they can. But I don't know what it is about our brains forming those teenage years. If something makes an impression upon your brain that's traumatic during ages like 12 to 16, it stays with you forever. You can't do anything to ever make it go away, versus something that could have happened when you were 30 years old. It has a different impact.
Yeah, you have a different amount of coping skills and resiliency you've had to build up versus just having the trauma thrust on you as children. I've worked with children from 4-year-olds to 18-year-olds that have been traumatized and suffered different types of trauma. So they just don't a lot of times have the coping skills to understand and process, and the scars get deep with that type of incident.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So you said that you had children. Let's talk about that. How old are your children, and what happened when your children were born that comes into play with your rambles? How are the two intertwined?
Okay. Tough question. A tough question and an easy question. My oldest daughter will be 3 in August. My youngest daughter will be 2 in about 3 days.
Oh boy.
Yeah. So a 2-year-old and a 3-year-old. And really my writing started around because of and around the birth of my oldest daughter.
Okay.
I think people talk about as parents, kids change your life.
Yeah.
And for me, it changed my outlook on life. I mean, I always cared about others, especially being a veteran myself. I cared about veterans, and I worked with abused children. But when you become a parent and you're a father, everything I do now is about them. It's not about me anymore at all. It's always about them. What am I leaving them? What am I teaching them? What do they see me doing that I want them to do or don't want them to do? So, I mean, it changes your entire mindset in how you live your life.
Definitely. I mean, yes, definitely. All right.
So that's what opened up my writing more than anything else. My rambles are, a lot of them are about children and how we can help them and overcoming things. And then in that same mindset, for lack of a better term, my side hustle. I mean, my realizing I can write and then figuring out what can I do with my writing to make my children's life better. Because, I have a good job. It's an ethical job, but it's a job. What can I do outside of that to make my children's life better? So that's where writing my rambles came into play. The screenplays that I write, a lot of them have more of them have had something to do with veterans issues or have involved veterans and overcoming things as well. But I put out I just actually got my first literary agent for my children's book that I'm trying to publish, and I'm writing a graphic novel that's, again, more about veteran and just, I guess, helping right the world with some of the evils that are in it. So, I mean, I think that one line of what am I going to leave my children kind of runs through everything I do. And it's what drives me more than I've ever been driven to do anything before.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah,
and it's scary. It's amazing.
It's amazing.
And we can only control them on a level, on that deep of a level, during those first few very formative years when they go off to school, and then we can't do anything about it or control the situation, and other children come into play, other people that they have contact with, teachers, lots of situations that we cannot control. And I believe I think that's where the issue is. No matter how you raise your child, there's something wrong or broken with the school system if these things keep happening between the suicides and the shootings, which are pretty equal at this point. It's just getting worse. But I am proud of the fact that they're finally starting to speak up. That's new. Now, I think we've done a really good job. People like you, me, and other advocates have done a really good job of getting them to speak up. And I think that has it plays a huge role in the healing process, if that's even possible.
No, I think that it's completely. I mean, having this dialogue and having it on the way that the millennials communicate and the younger kids communicate is a lot of it's social media, and it's not. There's always going to be negatives, and there's always going to be people pushing their agendas. But the fact that these kids have such a huge platform, the children have such a huge platform to now say, "Hey, this is us. This is what we want. This is how we feel." I think emboldens all children to be able to have more of a voice, which is good because they should. I mean, my girls have a voice already. My little one, I did something the other day, and I told her, I'm like, "Hey, that's not funny." And she looks right at me. She's like, "It's a little bit funny." I'm like, "Okay, you win."
Yeah. What's her personality like?
They're both strong, very strong personalities, which is what I want. I mean, I want them to be, and I encourage them to be strong in what they want. But she's, she'll tell us what she wants, and she's the 3-year-old. She does everything I do. Like I when I work out and I do like heavy ropes and heavy bag, and I do just different stuff, and she's always got to be part of that. Like I've got a couple videos of her with her karate kick noises when she's hitting the bag and kicking it, so she feels strong in that way. But just, I don't know, everything, I try to give them every tool I can. We're reading, we're playing, we're interacting, everything I can that I think from so many years of working with abused children, I try to make sure the things that I know that they needed but didn't know how to ask for, or they needed but didn't get, I try to be mindful of that when I'm interacting with my own daughters.
Wow. That's amazing. You don't hear very many parents saying that. Okay. Give me just 1 second. I'm going to shut the door. There's some background noise going on that I'm sure everyone can hear that I'm going to turn off. Can you give me 1 second?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay. I'm so sorry about that, guys. All right. So, back to you and the Rambles.
Okay.
And I'm getting the feeling that you have a lot of compassion for children and veterans kind of equally, right?
Well, I guess you write from your own kind of center point, and
Sure.
I am a veteran, and I've worked with for a long time, and I have my own children, so that's kind of a center point for me. But yeah, it's the one of the, like, I work for the military still as a contractor, and one of the captains that I worked with, he told me once, he's like, and we have differing beliefs on certain things. He's like, I'm going to call you a snowflake because you care so much about everybody. But he's like, I'm going to call you the snowflake that's, if I call you a snowflake, would be the one to come over and knock me out. I'm like, that's about right. I'm very passionate about, people being treated fairly and looking out for those that don't always have the ability to look out for themselves. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's a random relay, but this morning I was coming home from the gym and I stopped at the grocery store to pick up some, groceries, and the gentleman in front of me was standing there, and you could see he was kind of disheveled, hair was a mess, and he pulled his boots off a couple times, and he had no socks on, and you could tell he was in kind of a tough spot. And he's sitting there in front of me, and then he's like, "Oh, go ahead, I can't find my cards," and I'm like, "Don't worry about it, I got it."
Aww.
And so I paid for, and they had a couple things. They had like a sandwich and some other things. I'm like, don't worry about it, I got it. And he was very appreciative, but I guess that's how your mind works, is like you see that there's people that need it. They don't ask for it, and even if they do ask for it, if I'm not wealthy by any means, we live day to day like everyone else, but when you can help someone else that needs that hand up, you should. I mean, just...
You said it, hand up. That means a lot to me too, as you know. That's why I'm so deeply involved in so many organizations and programs that offer people a hand up, because some people really want to improve their situation or change their life for the better, and those are the ones that we can help. We can help them, but they have to help themselves, and they're willing to do that, and I love it. I love being involved with that. But all right, let's hear, which one do you want to read first?
I was going to read, and actually my computer the battery died, so I'm going to be reading them off my phone, so bear with me.
No problem.
Because I send them to myself all the time so I don't lose the data.
Trust me, I understand.
I'll read the one about the March for Our Lives, or kind of the impact it had on me after watching it, if that's okay?
Sure.
All right, and I posted this on my LinkedIn page, and I think my Instagram. So I use my social media platforms, for my writing, but more for my rambles sometimes too. And I kind of led with the opening on this one was, today I write this for the children. I'm not asking you to like what I have to say or to read what I have to say, because it's not about you and it's not about me. It's about the children. So that's kind of how I led with this. And I have a decent amount of followers that like to read my rambles. Yes. So I just put that out there because I don't ever I always put out there, this is what this one's going to be about. So if you like it, you like it. If you don't, you don't. That's not really what it's about.
All right. Let's hear it.
All right. And bear with me on this, because whenever I read what I wrote, if it was strong when I read it, it'll be strong when I reread it. So this one is called Who Will Lead? After tearfully watching Child... Yes, I said child. After watching child after child speak and share their stories, their pain, their anger, and their courage during the March for Our Lives event this weekend, all I can say is, I am sorry. I'm sorry that it takes our precious children's deaths to start this movement. I'm sorry, we as the current leaders of this world did not do more to protect you, to protect your innocence, and to protect your lives. I've asked before in my rambles, who will lead? I have no need to ask anymore. You will lead. You will make the changes in this world that I want for my own beautiful daughters. And please know this. As you lead with your hearts, your minds, and your courage, I will have your six.
Wow.
I will stand behind you in your cause and in front of you if your precious souls need protection. And I finished by saying, you are all loved and cherished. March for your lives.
Oh my gosh.
Did that come through or not?
Oh, believe me, that came through. Wow. I have chills from head to toe right now after hearing that. Yeah. Thank you.
No, thank you for, again, allowing me to share my thoughts. I mean, it's just mine, but
it needs to be heard, and it needs to be heard in that manner. The way you said it, not a lot of people can handle raw emotion, but it helped me a lot to hear you say that. Obviously, I'm going to do more research and watch these videos now because I'm intrigued and mystified. And you said it right when you said that it took their innocence away. And knowing what that feels like, I want to know how I can help that cause. How can we help them to know that they have a voice rather than just one event? What if we use this opportunity to make the changes like you were saying? Now that they know they have a voice, maybe they will use it. Maybe that's what needs to happen. And it's very, very sad and unfortunate that it took this, as you said. But, some things I think happen for a reason, and kids have always been afraid to speak up because of punishment. Right? Crime, punish. Ugh, you know what I mean? Punishment.
yeah, I understand.
I'm sorry, I got all choked up. I can't even talk. All right, but so I'm assuming millions of people took part in this.
Yes, it was, and I mean, and it still goes on right now. I mean, they haven't lost their voices,
and
my only concern is, and I'll probably write something again soon about it, is I don't want them to lose the momentum, and they won't lose it because a lot of these children were 16, 17, 18, so they will become the next generation to start reforming.
That's correct.
What mental health looks like in our country, what the different issues that they're out there speaking about will, because we make impact in this country through voting, and these children will be voting, and they will have lived through this, have developed a sense of courage that many generations may not have had.
You're right. Yeah, definitely right. Yeah.
Yes. So they will be the change. I guess they will be the change. They will be the leaders, and I'm okay with that because I think we as leaders have done some great things, but I also think we've lost sight of it's not about us. It's not it can be about your day-to-day life and the things you want out of life. That's how we work as people, I guess. But in the big picture, it's not about, at this point, it's not about me anymore. It's about what is left, what I'm leaving to my children. And I wrote another ramble about that after this because it made me think about it. And, I mean, if you really open your mind up to everything that's going on and what you do and how it impacts others, it's
most
an
people
amazing
don't.
place and it's a scary place.
I know. Most people, what do? They turn a blind eye. They ignore the obvious. Even I admit that I don't watch the news. I can't handle it. I can't deal with it. I'm not even on social media anymore. Which personally, I've taken down most of my pages and just quit interacting with people because every time I would open up any one of my social media pages, I would see violence and crime and death and suicides, and I can't feel that anymore. It's time for me to get off of social media and do something about it. So we're there. There's people like us who are going to create the foundation, and you're right, that we're going to set the children up to be the leaders. And they're going to be angry at some point, and that's going to be very useful in maintaining their momentum. You know?
Yeah, and I think there is anger, and they're still going to have to learn how to put their message out there and how to turn it into action. And I think if they're supported in doing that, they can. I mean, the generation that everyone considered slackers, which I'm sure the generation before me considered me one. You know, it just kind of rolls down. But these children could be a huge catalyst for change in this world, and that's, and not just in our country, but in the world. We need children. I mean, we just gotta embolden and educate and encourage them to have the voice, because we've had our time.
Yeah, and it's kind of ironic, you know, this is the same generation that everybody talks so much about, these kids being so self-absorbed and entitled. I hate that word because I hear it every day. I see it, you know, I saw it every day on social media. Everybody uses the word entitled. There's a few words that have happened in the last year that everybody uses now in regards to children today. And I'm mainly talking about teenagers into the early to mid 20s, this current generation.
And the world they live in is so scary. Again, being a father with young girls, the world they live in is so scary. It's not the world we grew up in. I mean, social media and instant access, and they have to live an entirely different life than what we led. And, you know, I think as parents, we try to instill what's important and how we grew up. But we didn't grow up, and these children have so much more of a voice, but they also have so much more of an opportunity to be belittled and attacked. And their sense of self will come under fire a lot more and a lot younger, I think, than it ever did with our generation. So as a father, I'm trying to wrap my head around that. And I kind of went the opposite direction you went, is I watch more news now, but I don't watch television. I actually go and find the more extreme views, a neutral view, and then, you know, a view that matches up with mine. But I want to hear all three. I want to hear what the message is people are putting out. Try to figure out why they're putting out that message, and what their agendas are, what their goal is, and see if it's, you know, sincere or if it's just a manipulation. Because that's what my children are going to see, and I got to figure out how to work my way through that.
Well, and that was my thoughts as you were saying all that. I'm thinking, what if this was just, you know, a political move, or what? They only get one day a year, or, I mean, what's going to come of this? Also, children today, and, you know, anybody under 25 right now is living in this generation that we're referring to. And wonder why there's so much hate and violence and crime. Their whole life is, you know, people bullying people and putting it on social media for the whole world to see. You can literally destroy someone's soul in like 2 seconds flat if you have your camera, right, at school, and you just catch somebody doing one thing, and you can ruin their entire reputation and probably their entire life. That's what victims of bullying feel like. So it's interesting.
I agree. I think there's another tipping point to that now, though, too, because I think that with this push and with these children having more of a voice, and looking at everything that's going on in the world, a lot of children, and I'm calling them children still, I'm saying, you know, the 20-year-olds and younger, are now are turning this social media, and they're coming up with amazing innovations, and they're creating, you can't do this to people. I mean, they're becoming more of a force of taking this tool that we created. I mean, maybe not my generation, but then, you know, one below me created this tool of social media, and it just kind of ran rampant, and people didn't have controls set on it. And it was used for a lot of the worst things.
Yeah.
But I think it's been around long enough, and there's this new generation that has known it since day one. And again, finding their voice on other things is going to make the switch where it's not going to be okay to use it this way as much, and it could be turned to more of a positive. And I feel like, and I watch as I look through different things, that there is a swing towards that. I mean, that's the analyst part of I'm a military analyst, so I watch things and I try to figure out the whys and wheres. And I think that this youngest generation, this new group, they're going to make some positive changes again, as long as they're supported in doing it.
That's the key. So it's interesting. You're an analyst and I'm sort of proactive, but aware that this was going to happen. You know that about me. I try to see what's happening or can feel what's going to happen next and try to approach it from a preventative perspective. Have I made an impact? I don't know. I don't know how large of an impact, but I do know that I'm laying a foundation, and I do know that it's headed in the right direction. I just really hope it's not some, again, political move. Giving kids one day on a stage.
I mean, there's going to be political in everything. I think where we live.
That's the problem, though. Yeah. That's what worries me. At what point are they going to shut them down? At what point are people just going to stop caring about the kids who have a voice and speak up? I have to consider that perspective.
And yes, I think that you're exactly right. You have to consider that. But I think that's where the adults and the leaders now step in and say, no, this can't stop.
Exactly.
And I think a lot of people have done that. They've stepped up, and these children are still out there and they're still speaking, and they've taken a lot of, I mean, for children to have already suffered this much to then be ridiculed and attacked and bullied by the older generation again, but I think the catalyst is that they're still standing up and they're still driving, which will embolden are the leaders that should be leading right now to continue to push their message. I know myself, I'll continue to push their message, just like I try to continue to push the message of veterans.
That's right. All right, let's hear, let me see. All right, let's hear the one about the veterans, please.
All right, give me 1 second. I got to pull it up on my phone because my computer turned off.
That's okay. I was just looking at my notes while you do that and just making sure that we cover it from every aspect so that we can have a thorough discussion and anybody listening can see that we have tried to address this from every angle to every angle, and that our goal is to keep pushing these children to speak up and to stop the violence. And gun control comes into play, obviously. Do you want to speak about that before we move on to the veterans?
You can open that box.
Okay, yeah, I am.
I won't speak. I won't speak factually. This one will be opinion. Right. I'm a military veteran. I served in the Gulf War. I have guns. I own guns. I have a rifle, which is a hunting rifle, and I'd always planned that my daughters will learn how to use guns safely. I mean, that's part of the whole idea of it. Right. But at the same point, and I've had this discussion with others that have guns and have different opinions than me. If what it takes for me as a parent to not have to worry when I send my children off to school at any age is for me to give up my guns, I give them up, because it is not about me. So we go down the arguments of, well, you need to be able to protect it, and I get that. And, if it was a world filled with no one is able to figure this gun control issue out, then I would be like, okay, we got to figure it out differently, and let's not give up anything. But there's other countries that have figured it out. And it's not what those that manufacture and make all the money off them want to hear. But again, I don't know what the answer is, but I know if guns continue to be part of our culture, my girls will know them and they will know how to use them safely. But there's so many other things that go into, everyone's like, I'm a good gun owner. I get that, but it's not just about you.
Yeah.
Is your child healthy? Is your child safe? All those pieces come into play. So again, I'm a Gulf War veteran. I have guns, But if I knew the answer was to give every one of them up today, they'd be gone, because it's not about me. Yeah. It's about protecting my children and being able to put them on a bus to go to school and be like, okay, I know they're coming home safe.
Yeah, that's the struggle.
You can help with the bullying and you can help with the verbal stuff, but when someone goes into a school and starts shooting, you can't. There's nothing you can do as a parent. I'd hate to ever be that parent that has to hear there was a shooting at my children's school. I mean, you were powerless to do anything about it.
You know what I mean? The way things are going, if nothing changes very soon, all of our young children are at risk. Every single one.
No, and honestly, with school system, and I'm not blaming the school systems. I mean, they didn't create the problem. But right. Yeah, I mean, I think we're already there. I mean, my daughters aren't even in school yet, and I'm like, how am I going to be able to put them on a bus and drop them off at school every single day and know that this problem is still out there? And I'm hoping these children that have this voice will continue to have this voice and help make changes we haven't been willing to or able to make, because I don't want my children to be at risk.
Yeah, I can see homeschooling becoming much more popular over this. And if given a choice, if a family were able to do it, I think given the risk at this point, maybe I would private school it or homeschool, honestly. Seriously.
Yeah, it's a scary thing. It really is. I mean, you wouldn't think it'd have to be a scary thing, but it is.
It is, and I don't know who to blame either, and I'm not trying to blame anybody or find somebody to blame, or whether it be the manufacturers, the kids, the parents. I don't know where this is coming from. I just know, I think it started back in the 70s with UT, and it was rare. And then Columbine happened, and social media happened. And all of a sudden, these two boys got instantly really famous, even though they took their own lives by the hand of suicide at the end of the shooting. But they became famous. They were able to negatively leave their mark on the world. And I know through the research that I've done that a lot of these shootings are all about it's spreading like a wildfire. They want their 15 minutes of fame, basically, or 7 minutes and 2 seconds. I know that sounds crazy, but the psychology aspect of it and the research that I've done for why these keep happening, why it's happening more often, it goes into play with social media. I know, it sounds crazy, but it's true.
Well, and again, that's
something we need to change.
For a lot of them, that might be their voice. It's not the right way. It definitely isn't. I mean, it harms others, but that might be how they determined that was their voice, which is...
Yeah, that's their perception. They think anything to get a million likes on YouTube or views or whatever, whether it's good or bad. That's the world that we live in right now. We've got a bunch of kids
different
competing
life
with each other.
We've got to learn to understand that that's how these kids are growing up, and we've got to figure out how to work within that.
I know, and that's the challenge. I don't know how to fix something that is becoming more and more competitive every day. It's starting at a younger age. I don't know how to, intercept this one. And it's going to take a lot more than just trying to figure that piece out, but... Okay, let's hear if you're ready.
All right, I think I'm ready.
Okay.
I'm trying to find the right one.
Okay.
Because I've written a lot about veterans. There was one I wanted to speak to.
How long did you serve?
I only served for a little over 3 years. I was a young punk kid that wasn't ready for college, so I got talked into joining up. And back when I first joined, it was that whole Rambo. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. You learn very quickly once you get in that it's not glamorized at all. And I was fortunate and unfortunate enough to within 2 months after getting out of basic training, go into the first Gulf War. So that definitely drove a different perception of the world and war and social, global politics home for me in a different way. which it's had a huge impact on me. And I think I'm fortunate enough that I've found the outlets to deal with the different traumas that you see as you go through it.
How do you deal with that?
A lot of it's my writing. I think I'm fortunate. I'm introspective enough that I'm always thinking and trying to figure out why I'm doing things, because sometimes I have no idea.
Smart. And that's a smart move.
I think that my writing has been a huge benefit. It opens a lot of wounds, but at the same time, it allows me to see that others have those wounds, and maybe someone's doing better than me, and I can ask them for help. Maybe someone's doing worse than I am, and I can give them that support and that help. So it doesn't go away. I think it's just learning to adapt and try to make something positive out of it.
As is with any trauma. Okay. Whenever you're ready.
All right. I'm not finding the one I wanted. The one I wanted was called Fragile.
Yeah. We'll just speak about
it.
It's okay.
Well, this one was more related to the number of soldier suicides that are always occurring, and
my full attention.
When I write my rambles, I write them once. Like, they bounce around in my head, and when they come out, I write them down, and they're done.
Okay.
To the point where sometimes I post them and have to go back and be like, what grammatically was I thinking there? But this one came to me in that a lot of the perception of our active duty military, and potentially even those of us that just gotten out, is very different than perception of a veteran that's been out for a while, that's dealing with mental health issues. So I tried to speak to the idea of fragile is like people see you in your uniform, and they see the different things, and people being awarded this, or they may see a person with missing their legs but still being strong. So they see that soldier, and they don't understand that soldier's fragile.
I know.
They may be the strongest person you have in your life, but underneath they've seen things and had to do things that the average person doesn't ever have to do. So they may be the strongest rock anyone's ever seen, but they're fragile, and it doesn't sometimes take a lot for that fragileness to break them. And people don't understand why, because you were this person I saw as this incredibly strong person. But I wrote kind of about, in every battle they've been in, they may have taken ground or they may have won something. But in every one of those incidents, they also gave up something.
Seriously.
They gave up part of themselves, or they gave up an understanding of why I was doing what I was doing, or where I was, or I thought I was more human than this, and I did something I don't feel was right. So I guess it's that persona of a strong, formidable person, but at the same time, there's a fragility to the human psyche that gets tested more for the military. And the military in our country currently is less than 1% of our population in the U.S.
I don't blame them.
There's very set things. You see a soldier this way, but you see that veteran on the corner that's struggling a totally different way.
Isn't that crazy? Any movie where anybody plays any kind of military role or joins the military or is in the military, in any movie, they glorify it. They show that strong soldier. They never show the reality of the situation. You and I both know the reality of the situation, and hopefully quite a few of our listeners are veterans and can, understand that suit, it's a lot like law enforcement. That's why the suicide rates are so high. It's an image. You have to act a certain way. You're told to. You have to. You're expected to. But underneath of that, you're right. Very, very fragile. And it doesn't take much.
And all human beings have that same dynamics. I think with veterans, again, you're asked to do and live and be certain things that the part of our population that's been abused and traumatized have more of a similar understanding of it, but the average population doesn't understand what they're asked to do and what they're willing to do and how it affects their families. And so there's just so much dynamics at play.
It's a tell. You know this. You sign those papers, they talk you into it. They say, oh, well, we'll give you money to put down on a house, and you'll get set amount of money for college, right? You know.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely, I mean, there's a sales point to it. I mean, again,
Yep.
you keep opening
recruiting.
doors. So if you look at poorer communities have more recruiting centers because it's seen as an opportunity, and it is an opportunity. I work with people that have made careers in the military that have put them and their families in much better places in life. Sure. But I also know these men and women also have suffered traumas. So it's a give and take. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, I guess, again, it's like anything else I do. It's just try to draw awareness to it. And just try to get people to see the other side of things. I mean, I work with current military. The contractors like myself are all only former military works at this particular place that I work. So, I mean, there's all different variables of where it's going. And like I'm calling them younger. Some of them are close to my age. That are getting out. I've got several connections on LinkedIn that deal with just transitioning veterans, just veterans health, and just this. I mean, anything. And I try to give them all these people's information to help them make that transition into the civilian world where, you're not that 1% anymore. Now you're with the rest of the population and trying to figure out how that works.
I don't know if the rest of the population has it figured out. I don't know if they do. You can't live in a world and just close your eyes to everything. And even if you had a happy childhood and you didn't join the military, you weren't abused, how they just go to work every day and worry about that and come home and complain about bills or whatever it is that normal people do. How do they live in a world where there's, you said 1% of them that are normal, right? So what about the rest of us? I think they need to adapt to us. Don't you agree?
Well, I'm not. I mean, the 1% is actually the numerical percentage of U.S. citizens that are in the military.
Oh, okay.
So then within that
1%,
1%, there's then whatever percentage that are able to cope well with it, and the ones that can't cope well with it. And a lot of times you don't know you're not coping until it's too late and you're on the street or you've done something to put yourself in prison. I mean, there's.
It's a cycle too, though. It's just like prison. It's just like any institution out there. And I would assume that coming out of the military, I don't assume, I know, needs to have more resources to transition them back into society, because it's not the same way it was when they joined the military. And it's unfortunate that, again, they make such a big deal to start reaching out to these kids when they're in high school and convince them that, hey, this is how you're going to pay for your education and we're going to help you buy a house and this is such a good decision, right? A few weeks later, they go to boot camp and everything changes. Everything. And now all of a sudden they're being bossed around and told what to do and yelled at and told that they're nothing. And the military is a lot like prison like that. Like, it's designed to break you so that it can mold you into who they want you to be, right?
To some extent. I mean, looking back on the military, it changed who I was as a person, but again, it changed who I was as a person in a lot of positive ways and in some negative ways.
Sure.
It is designed to test you and to push you, and the reason it has to do that is because you're not going to a 9-to-5 job. You're going to, especially in today's environment, today's military, you're going to end up on a battlefield.
You are. And you're serving this country.
That's the point of trying to push you to beyond your limits in advance to see if you really have it, and you can be a stellar soldier and be honorable in everything you do and still be broken by the time it's done. I mean, there's many military veterans that have come out and have been huge successes, and that's wonderful. But there's a lot that have come out and haven't been as successful because of the wounds they carry.
Yeah, I do. What do you think I wonder what those numbers are, the suicide rates for military vets.
Well, I wrote this particular, that Fragile Ramble, I wrote it in accordance with right now it's an average of 22 to 24 veterans a day are committing suicide or attempting to commit suicide.
Oh my God.
I mean, that's an unacceptable number.
That's law enforcement numbers.
Well, and again, that's that same type of that stress, and so yeah.
Right. It is. So, and then a lot of them end up homeless, but it's more about, and I've addressed this several times with, law enforcement officers or organizations that specifically deal with helping to prevent suicide in the law enforcement community. And they're just not allowed to have the ample time to deal with something. You're just thrown into a situation. Something very traumatic happens very quickly. You have to stand back up, get on your feet, and keep pushing forward and keep walking and keep doing your job, because that's your job. You don't get to focus. You don't get to stop. You don't get to grieve. How could anybody not be traumatized after that? But at the same time, I love, for instance, the organizational skills that we have, right? I was raised military, you were in the military. There's a lot of positive things that came out of it too, long term. But, it's really sad. Mental health, suicide, it's really sad that it's so high, and especially in the two institutions that we're supposed to put all of our support in and be a part of and join, and our kids are going to actually probably sign into, because they're starting to recruit them in junior high school. They even have the junior, whatever it's called.
Yeah, the ROTC, yeah. And again, in our country, we don't have, certain other countries do their military. Ours is still a volunteer force. So, I mean, you do choose to volunteer. You may be too young to really understand what you're volunteering for. But yeah, I mean, I was. But what I was going for was, I didn't, coming from the background I came from, I didn't have money for college. I didn't understand enough about how to get financial aid. So I knew the military was a way for me to go and serve my country and help get college paid for. And a lot more happens while you're in than your young mind understanding what's going on. But it's
tough.
So I have one that it was similar to Fragile. If you want me to read, I don't know how we're doing for time or what your thoughts are.
Yeah, I'd love to hear it.
Okay, and this one was it's funny. It's funny the things that trigger my mind. This one was triggered listening to some Five Finger Death Punch.
Nice.
And once they're triggered, the words just kind of ramble out.
All right.
Well, Five Finger Death Punch, I like listening to them. They do a lot to speak about veterans issues, and so are really supportive of American veterans. So they're kind of high on my list of people that I never knew about, that I've found out about more and more. And so this one was called I'm Finished with My Rifle, but it is not finished with me.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, this ramble is for my brothers and sisters in harm's way and their loved ones. While many may read this ramble and be moved, it will be the few, my brothers and sisters in arms, who will know our pain, our perseverance, and our struggle. We are trained to aim, to react, to fight. To the outside world, these traits make us seem strong and brave. However, the better we are at these skills, the more we must fight our own war to keep our minds and our hearts. We vow to fight and sacrifice our lives for our country, for our neighbors, and our loved ones. And we did, and we would again today, if need be. It is now that we are done with our rifles that our own war begins.
Yep.
Our minds want to aim, to react, to fight. It is now that our warrior's mind and our heart struggle to find peace. Not because we want to, because we have to. We've been trained to do these things. We have become our rifle. We have become a weapon. Our loved ones and family may struggle to love a weapon.
Yeah.
To understand a weapon. If you are a loved one and know this struggle, please stay strong and bring your soldier home. If you are a brother or sister, your weapon, please don't aim, react, and fight. No matter what, we are here. We have your six. For my family, friends, brothers in arms, and loved ones, I struggle to drop my rifle for you. I am trying to replace it with a new weapon, words. With this weapon, I will fight for you, my brothers and sisters. Fight for understanding to make sure you are not lost in the shadows of this world. Fight to make sure your honor, your valor, and your sacrifice are understood and not forgotten. That's another upbeat one I wrote.
That was really good, though. I liked it. I love how you're able to demonstrate the things that I'm struggling to find the words for, because I completely understand. My father was a chief in the Navy. He served 25 years, retired, and now still works with the military as well. My mother also worked for the military. I married into the military. I understand it from every single aspect. In the war, well, 2 wars. So, yeah, I get it. And I never thought about it from that perspective, the weapon perspective. It's a lot like being an abuse victim, except you're like a human weapon that can and is treated differently in society, because you are able to probably take another human being down with your own bare hands without needing any weapons. You can fight. You were trained to, right?
Yeah, that's
ironic,
that's
right?
kind of the idea, yeah.
Isn't it? Yeah, it's ironic, but yeah, cool. All right, so we've got a few more minutes left. And thank you for sharing your rambles with us. Let's see where we're going in the future. You are going to continue writing. You're going to write children's books and a graphic novel, correct?
Yes. Yeah. So screenplays are kind of the number one thing I'm writing right now. Uh-huh. And my graphic novel, I've got the first one written. I'm just looking for an illustrator. And my children's book is moving along to the point where I have a literary agent who's getting ready to start sending it out to production companies.
Nice. What's the children's book about? What's the lesson?
There is a lesson to it, but this one came probably 15 years ago. It's probably the first thing I ever wrote.
Okay.
It stuck in my brain. I didn't actually ever write it, but I wrote it in my head.
Yeah.
Which is where I do all my writing.
Yeah.
It was I happened to get a corgi because I own some horses. Mm-hmm. And then the story of the corgis kind of related to the Queen of England. And then, but that, as with anything, it's not necessarily about her, but understanding the pressures of, somebody that grew up as a princess and became a queen. And so it was actually, it's about a young girl who doesn't realize she's a princess who has corgis.
Okay.
And kind of how the playfulness between the two of them throughout her life allows her to, to keep joy and deal with all the pressures of, finding out, well, they're not just calling me princess, I am a princess. And then as her responsibilities grow and she's told, you don't run around playing with your puppies all the time. You have to do this, this, and this. To the point where it goes all the way, and it's not, again, it's very similar to the Queen of England, to the point where it goes all the way to the end, and you kind of see the Queen sneaking through the castle door, and she pulls off her hat and pulls out, a couple toys and starts throwing them down the hallway for her corgis. So it just kind of, I don't know there's a strong message to that. It's the first thing I ever wrote and in my head, and I wanted to make it a reality now that I'm doing all this writing, and I want to have this first story to be able to read to my daughters. And
right. I like it. I like it a lot. And we've got just about a minute or two left if you want to tell us what your graphic novel's about. I already know,
All right.
but this one's good.
So yeah, we spoke about this one a little bit, and it would be scary. It's going to be a darker. I mean, my ideas of how it be illustrated. It will be darker. Okay. Roughly, it's about a service member whose young child is abducted and killed while he's serving. So he comes back, full of grief and rage, and it's kind of a fictional. Well, it is very fictional. And he's actually recruited into a group of 7 riders that have just lost one of their riders. Just kind of it's in the storyline, but these 7 riders have kind of a mythical quality to them, where they are hunting this people that commit the 7 deadly sins in the world. And in order to hunt them, they then have to take the evil from their soul inside themselves and can contain all this evil. So there's been 4 of them that have fallen to the evil they've taken into their bodies, and they've become the 4 riders of the apocalypse.
Oh, wow.
So 5 books down the road, because the first book's just about this this rider becoming part of this group. 5 graphic novels down the road, that final battle is going to happen. So it's it's going to be dark and gritty and just kind of in your face, which is fine because it's a graphic novel.
That's awesome. What are you going to do when they offer you a movie deal on that?
That's fine. I mean, because
I
think it would make a great movie. And Walking Dead is kind of that thing. Walking Dead is a graphic novel that's actually never supposed to end the way it's written. And they've turned that into an amazing. And a lot of production companies, I'm learning, want books or it's something that's already got a huge fan base before you move to it, which I don't really care either way about that. I'm going to write what I want to write anyway. But it helps. Yeah.
Well, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, Netflix is coming up with original everything at this point. Amazon's monopolizing on everything in the world at this point. We need more original ideas, and instead of just remaking things, because that's the point where we're at. We're just remaking things because there isn't enough original material out there now. And it's always, what's the next Twilight, Lord of the Rings, etc. And your book, I guarantee you, it's probably going to get you a movie deal. Let's hope.
Yeah, fingers crossed, because everything I do is to make their life better for them. So.
Yeah. Oh. Well, thank you so much for sharing everything.
Yeah, thank you for having me again, Tiffany. And maybe next time we'll talk about some of my upbeat stuff.
That's fine.
I mean, I have a horror comedy screenplay I wrote too, which is actually pretty funny.
Yeah.
And maybe we'll talk about that, because I think a lot of what I write is very strong emotionally wise.
It is. So, but that's why I like it. Okay. Well, thank you. Apologies to those that have cried a couple times. You guys know me.
Apology accepted.
I like emotional. You gotta feel. You need to feel. You need to know what's going on in the world. You need to know what things feel like. You need to be able to relate. And Will is very, very good at helping put the right words out there to make you feel the things. And then, I think last time I read your Rambles, and hearing you read it was very strong, very powerful. So thank you.
You're welcome again, as always. Thank you for everything you're doing, Tiffany, with your center and all the work you do. I mean, you don't just get on here and talk about it. You're actually living it. So I truly appreciate that as well.
Thank you. All right. Well, I hope you have a good day.
You too, and thank you for having me on again.
Yes, sir. I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Bye.
All right. Bye, Will.